Let me start the recording again. Just a minute. Pen. Yeah, so this will do the job. Yeah, so we were discussing about this problem, right? Where we had this semiconductor slab and which was non-uniformly doped. And I just asked this question whether this diffusion current will be capable to drive this load or not, and whether there will be any small voltage that will be developed across this resistor or not. So you guys gave a very correct answer that because once the electron starts to move from the right side to the left side, they will leave behind the immobile charges, that is the phosphorus atoms whose electron has been removed now, and this phosphorus atom cannot move, correct? So because of that there is a positive immobile charges that are created on the right side. Then on the left side negative charges appear because extra electrons which were not there initially, they came over here, right? So these negative charges are developed but they are not immobile, they can move freely, and because of that there is extra electric field that has been developed, and this electric field will oppose any further movement of electrons from the right side to the left side. So the system is under equilibrium, correct? So what do I mean by that? The J diffusion, correct? The diffusion current density and the current density which is present because of this electric field, that is drift current density. So both of them will exactly cancel with each other and you won't get anything out of this semiconductor slab, right? So that's why despite connecting a load resistor, you won't be able to get any voltage across this particular resistor, correct? So I hope this question was clear. You guys are really smart, so I'm really happy that you are giving correct answers. So now let's ask one more question. We have heard this term called as equilibrium as well as the steady state, especially in the questions where I have a semiconductor slab and I was shining light from the left side, right? So we have solved some problems in the last session as well, right? So this light was turned on, this light was turned off at t equal to 0 and all. So can any one of you please tell me like what is the difference between this equilibrium and steady state? What do you mean by the system is in equilibrium and system has already reached the steady state? Or both of them are same only? Huh? Very good. Very good. And what happens at equilibrium? Charges are okay. Can I reframe that to a different statement where regeneration, generation and recombination rate will be equal? Okay, great. So, okay, so we in the first shot itself we got a very good answer. So, what do we mean by steady state? I will just give you an analogy of the thing that you already know, correct? So, we have a RC circuit, right? All of you must have studied this in the electrical networks or even in your 11th or 12th standard, correct? So, the moment you give some kind of step input over here, you of course expect that this voltage across the capacitor will reach to a particular value, correct? And now it takes certain time to reach to that value, and as this ma'am said, we equate time t is equal to infinity during the calculation of the steady state value, correct? So that means the circuit, the system took some time to reach to its final value, right? And the steady state means this final value has already been achieved. So in case of this particular semiconductor example, so if the light source is turned on at t equal to 0, correct? If the light source has been turned on at t equal to 0, the whatever extra carriers, that is delta n is equal to delta p, these excess carriers whatever has to be generated, because now photon is actually helping to excite the electrons that are present in the valence band into the conduction band. So the steady state exactly means that these concentrations that you are seeing over here, like, so they will not change, that is a time variation won't be there, time variation won't be there in the system, the time variation will be zero, correct? Whereas what do we mean by equilibrium? So if the system is in equilibrium, correct? If the semiconductor slab or something, whatever I am drawing, if I am telling you that this is under equilibrium, then we have one condition with us, right? we always tell that the Fermi level, the def by dx, the Fermi level does not change across the material, correct? This should be 0, correct? So that means the Fermi level will remain constant throughout the material. By the way, I should have drawn a band gap, not semiconductor slab like that. EC, EV, the Fermi level cannot change. So let's say this is N type. So Fermi level will remain exactly constant. So this is what we mean by the equilibrium. And what does this suggest? This also means one thing. The case where we have reached the equilibrium, that means the generation and recombination rates, right? The generation and recombination rates, R of generation is equal to R of recombination. Correct? This is what we can also see. So you can see over here as well, the system currently over here, this is not under equilibrium, right? The system is not under equilibrium, but at t is equal to, let's say, infinity, the system will be in steady state at this, for this particular case, but system won't be in equilibrium. Why not in equilibrium? Because I have applied an external stimulus, that is light. So I am shining a light on top of the semiconductor, so I am creating an excess generation which is actually overcoming the natural recombination rate that was actually happening. So for this particular case, the rate of generation will be higher than the rate of recombination. Correct? So I hope this is very much clear. So even if the system has reached the steady state, that does not necessarily mean that system has reached the equilibrium. Correct? So I hope this is very much clear to you. So now this was one question. Now the main thing that we should understand now is why to even study the PN junction. Correct? What is even need to study the PN junction, and why is it so important that we are going so much deep into it? What do I mean by deep? We are applying Poisson's equation, we are calculating the electric fields, we are calculating the built-in potential, we are drawing a lots of diagram, correct? We are deriving a lot of equations. What is even need to do that? So if you look at the structures of the MOSFET and the BJT, by the way, just don't get scared if you are looking at them for the first time. Sir will cover them in very much depth. So what do we have? We have a source over here in the MOSFET, we have drain, we have gate. This is an oxide that actually insulates the gate from this downward structure, correct? And now we have a p-type substrate over here. Now to understand, see, the MOSFET is nothing but the flow of the electrons will be like this. The flow of the electrons will be along this x direction. The electrons will move from this source region into this drain region. There will be an electron, the inversion carrier density will be created first, and when you apply the voltage between drain and source, then the electron moves between the drain and source. Okay, that is from the source to drain. So the current direction is, so the drain to source is the current direction, and the movement of electron is in the opposite direction, correct? So now if you look in this structure, I can at least see this one junction, Pn plus. Over here what I am seeing, if this is a p-type substrate, then I am seeing one more Pn plus junction. If I come to BJT, by the way, this is just a notation, correct? This n should have been actually n plus, correct? So I am also seeing a Pn plus junction over here. So what you are seeing over here, that there are a lot of junctions, lot of PN junctions that have been created in both of these structures. And since I want the current to flow from left to right, these junctions that you are seeing over here, these diodes, that these PN junctions will nothing but they will form a diode which I actually don't want to conduct. So I have to bias it in such a manner that there should not be any current flow in this diode, that is from P to N. There should not be any current flow like that. So since, because a lot of junctions have been created over here, and I want to make sure that I am only biasing those junctions which are of importance to me. Other junctions should not cause any trouble for the movement of carrier flow, correct? So that's why it is so much of importance to study the PN junction first in isolation, and once we understood the complete behavior of the PN junction, we will incorporate that learning into while studying these devices, that is the MOSFETs and the BJT, correct? And you have also seen there were different kind of junctions, right? PN, P plus N, then PIN was also there, correct? So now you must have got the reason why we study the one-sided junction first, because the one-sided junctions are created inside the MOSFETs as well as inside the BJTs, correct? So it is not something like it is not a random permutation and combination stuff. It is because those junctions are physically existing in the devices, it becomes an utmost concern that these junctions behave properly. That's why we study the PN junction first and then we move on to the devices. Okay, so I hope that point is clear. So now the next question, the conceptual question that we have is, you must have heard, again the guy told me that of course the depletion region will be created, right? When the electrons move from the right to left, they leave behind the positively charged immobile phosphorus atoms. Let's say this is doped with the phosphorus and this is doped with the boron, correct? So now because of that an electric field will be created. But there is one more question from my side. This n type, right? This consists of free carriers. These are free carriers, right? There are a lot of free electrons that are present over here, and there are a lot of holes that are present in this particular region, correct? So now since these electrons are also negatively charged, there are a lot of electrons over here and there are a lot of holes over here and they are positively charged. Why there does not exist any field in this region? See, you guys must be knowing the answer by now, because in the first or second question itself, we discussed something related to this, right? Why there does not exist any field in this region? They are neutral. Very good. So they are completely neutral. And what do you mean by neutral? So neutral means, for example, if you have phosphorus atom, there are 4 silicon atoms around it, correct? They are covalently bonded, and it also has one extra electron, correct? So now since this electron stays in this system, right? So since this electron stays in this system and corresponding to this electron there is a proton available in the nucleus, that means that the system is completely balanced. Whatever stuff has to happen, that is the because of the concentration gradient, it already happened in this region. It already happened in this region, correct? So if the stuff has already been happened, and for this particular system the electrons which have been brought by the phosphorus, there exists a proton in the nucleus, that means that the system is completely balanced. Though there exist free carriers, I will just write one important statement: though there exist free carriers, the net charge density, will be 0. What do I mean by that? This electron is free to move, correct? Because I'm assuming complete ionization. Since this electron is completely moved, it can take part in the conduction, correct? But corresponding to this electron, there is a proton that is present. So even though if I'm doping it, let's say this is a n region, right? If I'm doping it, let's say with concentration of 10 to the power 18 per centimeter cube, though there will exist, each phosphorus atom will contribute to 1 electron. So though there will exist 10 to the power 18 electrons over here, correct? So this is what the first part means. Though there exist free carriers, that is these free electrons, the net charge density is 0. Why the net charge density is 0? Because corresponding to all these electrons there exists a proton. But what happens in this particular case, in this depletion region, their electrons were actually moved from here to here in this region, correct? And why did that actually happen? This happened because of the concentration gradient, and they left behind this. Since this electron was broken out of this phosphorus atom, the proton which was present in the nucleus, there was nobody to actually balance that charge, correct? So that's why this region is not, their charge density is not 0 in this region, but in this region, this n region, the charge density is 0. And opposite is also true over here. The free carriers exist in this region, but the free carriers do not exist in this region, correct? But the charge density exists in this region, the depletion region, but the charge density does not exist in this region, correct? So I hope this is very much clear to you. If you guys have any doubts regarding any confusion, please ask me right now, because if you guys don't understand this, then it will be a lot of trouble to when we go ahead while solving the numericals and study any advanced concepts. Any doubts? Okay, sure. So see what has happened over here when I try to join the P and N. By the way, this is just a conceptual joining. Don't think like I'm joining two disjoint things, okay? So what was actually happening? So if you look over here, there was an abrupt concentration gradient. What do I mean by that? So if I draw the concentration of electrons, it was constant over here, and suddenly it dropped to a very, very low value, correct? If I consider the case of this abrupt junction. So now what is happening over here? The dopings changed abruptly, and the electrons are what actually seeing, they are seeing a very low concentration over here, correct? So now what did we study? If there exists a concentration gradients, then the electrons from here will start to move from right to left side, correct? If they start to move from right to left side, they will leave behind those phosphorus atoms, correct? These electrons are broken away from these phosphorus atoms, leaving behind the immobile positive charge of this phosphorus atom, which is present because of the photon that is present, not photon, the proton that is present inside the nucleus, correct? So when the electron left from here, it leave behind a positive charge. And where is it happening? See, if I am drawing this concentration gradient like this, correct? Just a minute. Yeah, if I'm drawing a concentration gradient like this, correct? So the only electrons over here, they are only seeing the concentration gradient. Let me just change the color of the pen. Just a minute. Pointer option, ink color, maybe to green. Yeah. So electrons which are present in this region, which are far away from this junction boundary, right? This metallurgical junction, they are not seeing any concentration gradient. The dN by dx is completely zero over here. If there does not exist the concentration gradient far away from the junction, these electrons will not even try to diffuse. They will stay where they are currently. Only those electrons which are seeing the concentration gradient, they will actually take part in the diffusion process, correct? And because the electrons start to move from right to left, they are actually leaving behind this positively charged immobile phosphorus atom. Similarly, what will happen from the left side? Now I have a boron. So what I can draw over here, let's say this is my boron atom. These are 4 adjacent silicon atoms. You know that boron has 1 electron less compared to silicon, correct? So that means what will happen? It will try to form a covalent bond over here and over here only. That's it, correct? So now it had only 3 electrons, so it formed a covalent bond with what you can say the 1 electron from these neighboring Si atoms. Now what you can see over here, there is a vacancy that has been left behind, correct? There is a vacancy that has been left behind, and now other electrons from other place can actually fill this vacancy. Now what happens? The natural tendency corresponding to for this particular boron atom, right? So the boron atom itself was completely neutral, correct? Now boron atom has 1 extra hole, correct? Boron atom has 1 extra hole over here. Now if the electron actually comes and fills this vacancy, now this boron atom will become negatively charged because this electron was not supposed to be there in the boron, correct? This electron was not supposed to be there near the boron, but since some extra electron, maybe from some other silicon atom and all, because of the thermal generation, the other covalent bond must have been broken, and the electron from the right tried to jump over here. The electron which does not even belong to the boron, since it came near to it, now this boron atom developed a negative charge, and this is also immobile, correct? This is also immobile because boron atoms cannot move. That's why we got a negative immobile charge over here, correct? And similarly, only those what you can say, only those if I draw a concentration gradient for the holes, then it will look something like this. Only those holes which are seeing the concentration gradient near the junction, they will take part in the diffusion, correct? The other away electrons, away holes and away electrons, since the concentration gradient does not exist, they do not take part in the diffusion process, correct? So that's why I hope it is very much clear why the depletion region was first of all developed. And since because there exists a net charge density on this particular side and on this particular side, they form a structure like a dipole. Dipole is nothing but a positive and negative charges, right? So we have an electric field over here. So because it formed a structure like a dipole, we have an existing electric field that prevents any further diffusion of holes from left to right and any further diffusion of electrons from right to left. The same concept what that guy had said in the case of the semiconductor slab problem that I had given to you regarding this. That guy said when the electrons tries to move from the right to left, it leaves behind the immobile positive charge. There will be a negative charge over here, and because of the field will be created, that field will oppose the further diffusion. Similarly, the field over here will oppose any further diffusion, even though the concentration gradient still exists, correct? I hope this is very much clear to you. If you guys have any further doubts, please feel free to poke me at any point. I will move on to the next problems now because I have some interesting things. Okay, so this is about the same thing that I had just explained, the same charge neutrality corresponding to each electron that phosphorus atom brings. It has the proton present in the nucleus, so the system is net neutral. Okay, so now then one more thing that sir must have already told you. when somebody tells you about the PN junction formation, do not think that there are two different semiconductor slabs that you are trying to join. The junction does not form like that. You may have heard or you may have read in the books that PN junction is a metallurgical junction. Correct? PN junction is a metallurgical junction. So what do we mean by metallurgical junction? We already have a n-type substrate over here. You do something, you do some kind of ion implantation, you do some kind of diffusion, and then you form a junction here itself. Within the same homogeneous material, I am forming a junction. This n-type material, it was completely homogeneous. I only had this n-type of material. I did something to it to create a new island and to create a new p-type island, and this is how I am forming the junction. This junction, if you just join them together by doing some welding or not, this is not a metallurgical junction, this is something different. Correct? So always remember, when you consider the case of the PN junction, it is always a metallurgical junction. Do not think that two disjoint semiconductor slabs are being brought to the contact and or the PN junction will form over here. Okay, so I hope this is very much clear to you. Now the next question is to you guys. So now we will investigate the shape of this energy band diagram. Correct? So now what is the need to evaluate the shape of the energy band diagram? You will understand this in the next 2 or 3 slides. Okay, so now what did we see over here? This side is P, this side is N. So now my question is, you are seeing some kind of variation, right? Some kind of variation over here. That is, this energy band diagram is some kind of function of distance. Correct? So that means this energy band diagram that you are seeing, it is some kind of function f of x, right? So now my question is, EC is flat till this point, EC is flat, and on the right side, so for example this particular part, the EC is completely flat. Over this part also the EC is completely flat. Now this variation that you are seeing over here, let me denote it by f of x. So now my question is whether this f of x is linear, whether it is parabolic, whether it is cubic. What do you think? Linear? Okay, can you give me any logic why this will be linear? Haha. No, no, we are not applying any bias, ma'am. The bias, yeah, it's in equilibrium. Correct. Yeah, so my question was, if I divide this energy band diagram into 3 parts, the right part is nothing but the far away from the junction, that is the N-type part. The left part is nothing but far away from the junction into the P-type semiconductor. And this one that you are seeing over here, this is nothing but your depletion region. Correct? So now you are seeing some kind of variation. See, the EC is falling over here, right? EC is falling, and then again it is becoming flat. So now I am asking you the nature of this fall. This fall, if I denote it with the function f of x, whether this fall is of linear nature, whether it is decreasing linearly, whether it is decreasing in a parabolic fashion, whether it is decreasing in the cubic fashion, or whether it is decreasing in the exponential fashion. So this is my question. Exponential. Okay, any reasons for that? Okay, I will write it. Just give me a moment. N is equal to Ni exponential of, maybe I should write like EF minus EI by KT, right? Yeah. So now, yeah, tell me. Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So if, okay, so if I consider EF minus EI to be exponential, right? So let me write it as exponential function E of x. So now N will become what? The electron concentration will become exponential of x, correct? So that means n is nothing but it will look like e to the power x, correct? It will look something like this. So have you seen some kind of expression like that for the electron? This will be very very rapid, because first of all the exponential is a, what you can say, a non-linear curve, right? Now you are taking the exponential of the exponential. So now this will be very very sharp. The concentration that you're seeing over here, right, EF minus EI, the concentration is decreasing gradually. Now coming to your point, this n and ni, this n actually varies exponentially. This thing that you are seeing over here, this one actually varies exponentially, not this. This has some kind of exponential nature. Okay, I will just give you one hint. Can you relate this V of x to the E? Can you just relate V of x to the energy? Have you heard about this equation, E is equal to minus Q times V? In your class 11th or 12th physics. Have you heard about this equation? E is nothing but your energy and V is nothing but your potential. Have you heard about this equation? Yes, correct. And let me just give you a confirmation of this equation. What is written over here? E times VBI. This E is nothing but Q times VBI. And this is what? This is energy band diagram. So the dimensions of Q into VBI are coming out to be the dimensions of energy, and it is coming from this relation only. Correct? So the whatever is the shape of your V of x, correct? Whatever is the shape of the V of x, since this energy band diagram has been drawn with respect to the energy of an electron, you have to take the negative over here first of all. So if I just draw the negative of this, then it will just do something like this, correct? So whatever is the shape of the fall, or shape of the rise in the V of x, that is the potential diagram, the same shape will appear over here. Correct? And the confirmation I just gave you, this difference is nothing but Q times VBI. So this E actually came from here itself. Correct? This E actually came from the here itself. You can draw this energy band diagram. Sir must have told you one procedure, that align the Fermi energy levels and then just join this. Correct? But while joining, it does not tell you whether that joining will happen in a linear fashion, exponential fashion, or a parabolic fashion. How to know what is the nature of this fall? The nature of this fall can be determined by the nature of the rise in this potential diagram over here. Since this is parabolic, and why this is parabolic? Because the charge densities on the right and left side are constant. If you integrate it, correct? If you integrate it, you know this equation, d by dx is nothing but what? Rho of x by epsilon Si for the case of semiconductor. So you integrate it, you get the electric field diagram like this. If you integrate it negatively, I mean take a negative sign and integrate this electric field, you get the diagram of the potential, correct? So since this was the linear, this became parabolic, and since this became parabolic, the nature of the fall will also be parabolic. I hope it is very much clear. Any doubts in this concept? Okay, great. So if no doubts, then I will just ask you somebody was saying something. Okay, so now since if you guys don't have any doubts, so we will just remember one thing: whatever will be the shape of this potential, the same shape will appear in this transition region, that is in this depletion region, correct? So now this is the case of an abrupt p-n junction, correct? The electric field was already linear like this. So if I just integrate it, then the potential will look something like this, and this is what we have seen over here. Since the potential V of x was parabolic, the nature of the fall over here, it came out to be parabolic. Now I will ask you one more question now to you guys. If the electric field over here is actually itself parabolic, because this is a linearly graded junction, This is a linearly graded p-n junction, correct? If the electric field over here is parabolic, in the previous case it was linear, then what will be the shape of the v of x? It will be what? What I have to do over here? Cubic, exactly, very good. So this will be cubic. So if anyone tells you that to draw the energy band diagram of linear p-n junction, then this fall that you are seeing over here, it will be of the cubic nature. It won't be of the parabolic nature. Okay. So I hope that concept is very much clear. Now coming to PIN concept, the PIN junction, which sir has taught in the last part, correct? So you can see the electric fields are looking like this. It contains both region, one where E is rising and falling linearly and E is constant, correct? So if I integrate this linear part, then I will get parabolic first, correct? So that means if I just draw the potential diagram for this, correct? So let me just draw it quickly. So now it will look what? It will look, it will, just a minute, it will rise in a parabolic fashion, correct? Then I am having a constant thing, but the integration of constant is also linear, right? So now first of all it will rise parabolically, then it will rise linearly, and again after that, since I am decreasing, I am having a negative slope over here, the amount after doing the integration, this total integration should fall because my slope is actually over here, it's constant and it's negative. So it has both the regions. This region is parabolic, this region that you are seeing over here, it will be linear. So now what will happen if you just flip it, if you just make a negative of it, and if you try to draw the energy band diagram, then what will happen? So maybe you will be having some shape like this, then it will fall parabolically, because first of all I have a parabola, it will fall parabolically, then it will fall linearly as well, and then I will get something like this. So now there are two different regions over here. Note that the function is still continuous. Discontinuity is not at all allowed, correct? The function is still continuous, but there are two different regions. One is the parabolic over here, and one region that you are seeing over here, it is falling linearly. So this is the reason why I emphasized so much on the shape of this fall, because sir must have given you some kind of homework to do it in the case of the PIN junction. Just try to draw the energy band diagram and all. So this is the way you have to draw the energy band diagram. You have to first of all find the potential, find the nature of the rise or fall, and the same nature will be present in the energy band diagram as well, correct? And this abrupt PN junction is very similar to this PN junction. This is PN plus junction, this is PN junction. So the shape will be same only, the fall will be parabolic only. Okay, so I hope till this point it is very much clear to you. So a few more concepts, after that we will take a 5 minutes break and then we will resume the problems. Now there is one more important concept, like without drawing anything, correct? If this, let's say this energy band diagram was not even given to you, this is for the PN junction, right, under equilibrium. If this energy band diagram was not given to you, I actually want to understand whether the EC, this EC will be higher on this particular side or on this particular side. So I just have to make some kind of intuition and prove it to you that the EC, the conduction band energy for this, the energy band diagram is drawn for the electron, right? So this EC will be actually higher on the left side compared to that of the right side, correct? So now this electric field is actually directed in the depletion region from right side to the left side, correct? So now what I will be doing, this diagram is not at all given to me, and still I have to tell you whether the EC will be higher on the left side or on the right side. Now what I will do, I will try to bring the electron that is present in the region, I will try to move it into the left side, correct? So now can anyone please tell me whether this electron will face an opposition from this electric field, or whether it will go in the same direction as that of the electric field? Opposition, exactly, very good. This is nothing but your high school physics, right? The holes will, basically the positively charged particles will move in the same direction of the electric field. The electron will move in the opposite direction of the electric field. Very good. So now when electron actually tries to move from right to left, it is actually being pushed away because of this electric field. Now if I want this electron to move from right to left, Now this electron has to perform some work against the direction of this electric field, against the direction, not against the direction. It has to perform some work in the direction of this electric field, that is it has to overcome the opposition. It has to overcome the opposition from electric field. Correct, it has to overcome the opposition of the electric field, right? So what does it mean? So it is now facing some kind of barrier. Correct, it is facing some kind of barrier to move from here to here. And you know that acquiring energy for an electron is a tougher job compared to electron losing its energy and moving to the lower state. Correct, what do I mean by that? So let's say EC is there, EV is there. This is an electron that is present over here. It wants to jump from the valence band to conduction band, and now on the same side, on the opposite side, let's say in the same semiconductor slab, there is an electron that is sitting in the conduction band. It wants to jump from the conduction band to the valence band. Correct, so this electron can easily fall over here, but if I want to excite a lot of electrons from this to this part over here, then I have to apply some kind of stimulus. Correct, so what do I mean by that? So if from this region electron wants to move from left to right, now the electric field is in the opposite direction. So now this electron, that is whatever is present over here, now it will not face any opposition. It can actually move easily from left to right. But when it tries to move from right to left, correct, it is facing some kind of opposition. Correct, so now what can I say? Now you also know that EC, what sir must have told you, that if you take an electron, this band diagram, the curvature of the band diagram acts like a slope for this electron. That means this electron will just roll down of this slope. Correct, this electron will just roll down of this slope. Correct, so what I told you, I have two possibilities. The possibilities are something like this. This is the first possibility that I have, and this is the second possibility that I have. Now from intuition, what did we get? The electron from left to right movement, it should not face any trouble. So now the moment I place this electron on this upper part of this, let's say this, imagine this is a mountain. So this electron can easily roll off from this mountain. But if I place an electron over here, now it is facing an upward slope. It has to do a lot of work to move from left to right. And what did we confirm? The electron should not face any opposition while moving from left to right. Correct, so electron is not facing any opposition while moving from left to right. So that's why the EC on the left side should be higher than the EC on the right side. So this is the one sanity check that you can use when we will be looking into very complex structures, right? This is just a basic PN junction. If you are looking into very complex structures, maybe heterostructure or multiple PN junction kind of thing, this kind of sanity check will actually help you to just verify whether you have drawn the energy band diagram in the correct manner or not. Correct, so I hope it is very much clear to you. Now just before taking the break, so now can you guys tell me whether free carriers exist in the depletion region or not? Question is, free carriers exist in depletion region or not? What do you think? No? Okay, so let me just do one thing over here. So can you see the difference between EFI and DF over here? Correct? Till this point, let me draw a boundary. That will be much better. Correct? So EF minus EFI difference that you are seeing over here. Correct? So this is a P-type material and this is the N-type material over here. Right? So now if you look, then let's say, and this is the expression that you only told me, right? This electron concentration is nothing but Ni times exponential of EF minus EFI by KT. Correct? So the electron concentration is directly proportional to the exponential of EF minus EFI. So if I move from the right side, EF minus EFI is higher. As I move to the left side, this EF minus EFI, it is actually becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. At one point it becomes 0, and then at other point it becomes negative. It is becoming negative and it is increasing in opposite fashion. Correct? So what do I mean by that? So as I traverse from right to left, correct, as I move as I move from right to left, correct, this N naught concentration that you are seeing, this N naught should decrease even within the depletion region, because the EF minus EFI in this particular region it was higher, and this EF minus EFI even changed its polarity in this part of depletion region, it became lower over here. So what does this mean? The electron concentration should fall off as I move from right to left even within the depletion region. Correct? So now can you answer me whether the free carriers exist in the depletion region or not? It will exist, or I am doing something wrong? Did I do anything wrong over here? Huh? Hmm? This expression will be valid throughout the semiconductor at any particular point of the semiconductor if it is in equilibrium. What do I mean by that? So let's say if you have a PN junction, P and N, correct? So now at any particular point, see, the semiconductor is in the equilibrium. The moment I told you that the semiconductor, any semiconductor device or material, it is in equilibrium, the law of mass action should hold true, correct, because we are talking about equilibrium over here, correct. So now what do I mean by that? Even within the depletion region, this N naught into P naught, if I have not applied any bias, this N naught into P naught should be equal to Ni square at any particular point. What do I mean by any particular point? So this is my depletion region, correct. If I take any particular point, that is x equal to maybe x naught, and draw a line over here, in this particular line also that you are seeing, this N naught into P naught will remain valid and its product will be equal to Ni square. Though there exists a depletion region, even though there exists an electric field also, correct, there is existing an electric field from the right to left, but still semiconductor is in the equilibrium, because equilibrium does not have to do anything with the field. Electric field has to do, sorry, the equilibrium condition has to do with the net current flow throughout the material. Since the J net, which is what, J drift plus J diff, since this is becoming zero, there is nothing flowing in this, no current flowing in this material, because I have not applied any stimulus, correct. Even if you close it and even if you connect any external wire, right. So what do I mean by that? This is my semiconductor material, this is P, this is N. Even if I short on both the sides, right, I will not get any current, correct, because this J net is completely zero, the system is completely under equilibrium, no external stimulus has been applied to the system. And since there is each and every part of the PN junction is under the equilibrium now, because of that this N naught into P naught is equal to Ni square will be valid throughout the semiconductor material. Is it clear? Okay, very good. So did I do anything wrong over here? Because we were hearing a lot from the lectures as well as from semiconductor books as well, that there does not exist any free carriers in the depletion region. But I have clearly shown you the electron concentration will drop off as I move from the right to left. I will do one more thing. I will just draw one more diagram. Just a minute. P side and this is N side. Correct? And let's say this is the depletion region. Correct? So now what I am drawing, I am starting to draw the whole concentration first. This is the Na. Correct? So have you seen this diagram? Just let me know. It will roll off like this. This is not linear, by the way. This will fall off some, maybe in some different f of x, and then it will reach over here. Similarly, if I change the color of the pen, just a minute, in color, maybe if I take the red color pen, right, what I am drawing over here, these are the electron concentration. Even this will fall off, and now it will reach a equilibrium value over here, and this value is nothing but Ni square by Na, and this value is nothing but Ni square by Nd. Have you seen this diagram? in the lecture materials. Have you seen this diagram? Yeah, exactly. You must have seen this diagram, right? But the important thing to note over here is that this concentration, right? This is in the log domain. Now, if I draw the same scale on the linear, correct? See, let's take some numbers, okay? This is what, let's say 10 to the power 18. This is also 10 to the power 18. So now that means what? This concentration Ni square by Nd. If I just assume that Ni square is what, 10 to the power 20. If I'm just ignoring the 2.25 term over here, that means this concentration is just 10 to the power 2, and even this concentration is just 10 to the power 2. You are able to visible this fall only because I'm drawing the concentration in the log domain on the y-axis. Because what does this log do? So if I have some exponential, then on the linear scale it will rise very quickly, correct? It will rise very quickly, correct? But if I take the log of this, then it just became a linear. So a steep non-linear increase in the function became just a linear increase because of taking the log, correct? That's why you are able to see this fall and increase very smoothly. If I draw same figure, in the linear scale, versus the x-axis, correct? Do you know how you will see the concentration? So let me draw a depletion region. This is the whole concentration, correct? Just it falled off very rapidly. It became almost zero over here, and now the concentration of the whole, it actually remained like this only. Now I will change the color and I will try to draw the electron concentration. The right side is the electron concentration. This is heavily doped, so electron concentration started from here on the right side, then it will fall off very quickly, correct? And then it will stay to a very low value. Now what you are seeing over here, this is close to zero. This is very close to zero on the linear scale. Even though this is 10 to the power 18, this is also 10 to the power 18. Now this became as if it is touching the x-axis. Now why did this happen? Because this this concentration is 10 to the power 2. This is 10 to the power 18. So this quantity that you are seeing over here, it is almost 10 to the power 16 times smaller. 10 to the power 16 times smaller compared to this concentration, and on the linear scale this will be acting like a very close to zero value because you are reducing the thing by 10 to the power 16. This is not a small number. So that's why if you draw the diagram linearly, sir has drawn both kind of diagrams, this as well and this as well. So that's why by looking at this diagram you tell that even though there exist free carriers in the depletion region, their concentration is extremely low. They are very small, and if you take them into account while deriving the equations for the p-n junction, they will have a negligible kind of effect. So this is what we call as a depletion approximation, and sir must have told you this, right? Depletion approximation. So what does this depletion approximation means? No free carriers exist in the depletion region. Correct? And this is the depletion approximation. If I want to calculate the exact characteristics, I have to take these free carriers into account, and since there exists a electric field which is directed from the right to left side, this is the direction of the electric field, correct? Since the electric field is directed from the right to left, now these free carriers present in the depletion region, they will also constitute a drift current now, correct? So I have to take that thing into account also. But since it is dropping very sharply, see I am showing like this because it is in the log scale. If you just look it quickly, it is dropping extremely sharply, okay? So even if you ignore this concentration that you are seeing over here, this concentration drop and all, even if you ignore this, it does not cause a substantial change, and the only reason why we are ignoring this concentration is because of this depletion approximation. So if somebody says to you that does free carriers exist in the depletion region, of course they exist, but do they have substantial effect on the characteristics of the whatever equations we have derived? No, not at all, and that's why we assume the depletion approximation. I hope this is very much clear to you. This was a very important concept. Okay, if you guys have any doubts, then I will just give you 1 minute, then we will move on. Any doubts in this concept? No? Okay, very good. So now, okay, based on the same concept of the free carriers existence in the depletion region and these neutral regions, I will just ask you one more concept. If I apply a bias, let's say I apply a 5 volt bias across this PN junction, so this is, you must have studied that this is we called as quasi neutral. This is quasi neutral. This region is also quasi neutral. Correct? But this region consists a net charge density. Correct? So now what I am doing over here, I will just draw an equivalent circuit model of this. Correct? So now I am drawing for P region first. Let's say I am drawing some kind of resistance. This is RP. Then I will draw R dip because of the depletion region, and I will also draw an Rn, that is for N type quasi neutral region. And what I am doing, I am applying a bias like this. Let's say this is a 5 volt battery. Now the first question that I will be asking you, what do you think whose resistance will be lower? Whether this R depletion will be lower, I will just write first case over here. R depletion much lesser than Rp comma Rn. Assume for now that Nd and Na, both of them are equal. Nd is equal to Na. Okay, so this is the first case, and the second case is R depletion is much greater than Rp comma Rn. So what do you think, which of this is true? Sorry, option 2. Yeah, very good. So yeah, so what was the reason for that? Hmm. Very good, very good, very good. Yeah, yeah, your answer is absolutely correct. So since there exist a lot of mobile carriers in this region, that is holes, and there exist a lot of mobile carriers in this region, N type semiconductor material, but there does not exist a lot of free carriers. Free carriers do exist over here, but they are very less in numbers. Correct? So that is the reason, if there does not exist any free carriers present over here. So correct. So because of that, the resistance of this region will be extremely high compared to the resistance of these other two regions. Now first question you guys answered correct. Now a very simple question now. So if I apply a 5 volt over here, where do you think most of the voltage will drop? Whether across RPRN or across RDIP? Where will the most of the voltage drop happen? RDEP, very good. So maximum voltage is dropping across this RDEP, right? Correct. So now in the further week's lecture, the next week's lecture, you will see that we will also start applying some kind of bias across the semiconductor, right? And you will see that whenever we apply some kind of bias, right? So though there exists a VBI over here, correct? Though there exists some finite resistance in this quasi-neutral regions, what we assume that whatever bias VA we apply across this PN junction, this VA, what it will do, actually it will lower the potential barrier. That is VBI minus VA will be the new potential barrier now, and it won't be just VBI. There is not happening any voltage division because this RDEP is extremely high compared to the RP and RN values. That's why all the voltage drop will be dropped across this depletion region only. So don't get confused when in the next lecture sir will tell you that applied bias is directly reducing the potential barrier, because this voltage division, right? See, this is a simple voltage divider, right? How much voltage of this 5 volt is dropping across here? You only told me that since this resistance is very high, all the voltage will drop across over here. So in the next week's lecture, you will see that this whatever VA I am applying across the PN junction, this barrier will be lowered by the same amount exactly. If the resistance of these regions were comparable with this R depth, then this VBI minus VA would not be holding true, because then you would have to apply a voltage divider, and whatever voltage you get across this R depth, then VBI minus that new R depth, not new R depth, basically that new VA dash that will be appearing across this depletion region. So that will be the amount with which the potential barrier will go down. So do not get confused why we are just subtracting VA with the VBI. It is because of this reason only. I hope this concept is very much clear to you. Now the last concept for today, let me see if we will get some time to solve the numericals or not, or what I will do, I will solve them by myself and will send them in the notes, because other two TAs who will be conducting the live problem solving sessions, so they are taking the numericals extensively. I thought this clearing these concepts are extremely important, or else in the future lectures it will cause a lot of trouble if these concepts are not clear. Now we will move on to the last concept, that is the PIN junction. So now the first of all, you should ask me why I have to study this PIN junction. I gave you the reason for PN junction, right? The structure of the MOSFET, the structure of the BJT. I showed you so many PN junctions over there. Similarly, you should ask me this question: what is the motivation to go behind the PIN junction? Now I will tell you to come to this concept of how internet works. Correct? So how internet work means, you know, there are optical fiber cables. Let's say this is a sea. I want to transmit the information from this country to this particular country. There is a network of optical fiber cables that are going beneath the sea, right? Under the sea there is a lot of network of optical fibers. So how does this information actually transmit? So you have some kind of laser or LED, correct? What is its job is it modulates the intensity of the light. So for example, whatever information, let's say I want to transmit 1010, accordingly it is just a simple thing that I'm showing you. Let's say I have an LED, correct? What I will do, I will just change the voltage according to this information. The intensity of the light that is coming at the output of the LED, even that intensity will vary. So let's say this intensity is varying like this. This is intensity of the light and this is my time, correct? So this is the kind of function, this is the kind of light that LED will send at the output. Because of the loss of the optical fiber cable, the intensity that you are seeing over here, it will actually reduce, correct? So let's say this was A0, then this intensity that I am drawing over here, correct, it will reduce to maybe A0 by, maybe let me give you a number, maybe A0 by 100 or maybe A0 by 1000 also, correct? Now at the other end, what we have to do, this light information, this modulation in the intensity, I have to convert it into electrical energy, because I process all the information in the electrical domain, correct? So now we need one circuit, we need one kind of a device which can convert optical energy to electrical energy, correct? And this is where the concept of photodetector comes in, correct? The job of the photodetector is to convert this optical energy into electrical energy. And when this electrical energy gets when it arrives after the conversion from optical to electrical energy, then I use all sort of amplifiers and all, and then do some kind of baseband processing at the other end. Okay, so now I need a device which can act like a photodetector. Now I will just ask you one question. If I have a PN junction, over here, correct? Let me draw a depletion region. So this side consists of immobile positive charges. This side consists of immobile negative charges. So the direction of electric field is directing from right to left. So this is the direction of electric field. Now somehow, let's say, see, the ma'am already told me that the rate of generation will be equal to rate of recombination. This is also what do you mean by equilibrium, correct? If some carriers are being generated over here, let's say I am shining some kind of light throughout the semiconductor material, I am shining some kind of light over here. If there exist electron and holes, correct? So let me just zoom it. Let me just zoom it a little bit so that it will be a better, correct? If electron and hole pairs are created in this depletion region because of the shining of light, can you tell me where will the electron go? Let's say the electron generated here, let's say the hole got generated over here, correct? So in which direction will electron move? The direction of electric field is from right to left. In which direction will electron go? Left to right, exactly. So electron is going in this right direction. So the direction of electron is like this, and opposite to that, the direction of the movement of holes will be like that. So what you are seeing over here, any electron hole pairs which are generated in this depletion region, because of the existing electric field, they will be swept away out of this depletion region, and they will move outside, correct? So now what I'm doing now, I'm considering an intrinsic region over here. So instead of just having this PN junction, I'm inserting an I region. Now the whole purpose of doing this is to increase this depletion region completely, because I want this depletion region to be as wide as possible, so that maximum light, the light that is actually falling, I increase the capture area for that particular light. What do I mean by capture area? So the capture area means if I am incidenting a photon, it should be generating an electron and hole pair first, and these electron and hole pairs should be swept away by the electric field. And if I want to increase the number of electron hole pairs that are actually being generated because of this shining of light, I have to increase the depletion region. So you will see in the next week's lecture that if I reverse bias the PN junction, then the depletion region will actually increase. Sir will teach you this in very much depth. Okay. So if I apply a reverse bias means connect the negative of the battery with the P type terminal, connect the positive of the battery with the N type material. Correct. So if I want to increase the depletion region area, then I have to reverse bias the PN junction. But even after doing that, I am still not happy. I want to still widen the depletion region. So what you do? So you must have studied this concept that if I have a material and there is a P++ over here and there is a P over here, then the entire width of the depletion region will actually lie on this lightly doped side. So this will be the width of the depletion region, correct? And this is my P. So the entire width of the depletion region came into a material which was lightly doped. Now just look at this junction. I can break this into P plus intrinsic junction, correct? This is intrinsic junction. There is no doping. This material does not have any doping, and this is heavily doped. So this entire intrinsic region that you are seeing over here, it will be completely depleted of any free charges. Similarly for over here also, if you look over here, this is N plus I junction. So the entire depletion region will exist over here. So what is actually happening? Now my depletion region is extremely wide. It is extremely wide now. So now I'm increasing the capture area. I'm increasing the capture area of all the photons that are capable of generating the electron hole pairs. And because of the electric field that will actually exist in this depletion region, the holes will move to left side, and electrons will move to the right side. And because the circuit is complete, see, I have already applied a reverse bias, right? And because the circuit is complete now, you will get a current. You will get a current corresponding to the intensity of these photons that you are actually having, correct? So now I was able to convert this optical energy into the electrical energy for my use, correct? Now what was so wrong with the PN junction? The depletion region was not wide enough that I actually wanted. To increase the depletion region, I have to introduce a material whose doping concentration is extremely low. What is the best material? The material which is not doped with any material at all. This is why I have an intrinsic region over here. And because of this entire region will be completely depleted. And since this entire region is completely depleted, now I have more capture area. That means more photons will be capable of generating more number of electron hole pairs. And note that I want to make this current as large as possible, correct? Because I want to detect. If I am able to make this current as large as possible, that means even a small intensity of the photons that I am actually inserting on this intrinsic region, it will generate at least some current which I am able to detect. So I will be at least able to detect a signal over here, and this is what I want, correct? So that is why we are studying the PIN junction separately, correct? the PN junction could do the same job but not in a very efficient manner. The number of electron hole pairs generated and which will give rise to a large current, that will be very less in the PN junction compared to if I use the PIN junction instead. Correct. Now one more thing, I will just tell you, this will give you a very good intuition. Correct. So now in the case, this is a normal PN junction. Correct. So now I have, let's say, negative, 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 and I have positive, 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 positive. This is P side, this is N side. Correct. So now I have a material which is positively charged over here, right? Semiconductor material. This is a negatively charged material. Correct. This is the depletion region that I have. So what do you think, guys? So since two type of different charges, that is the materials over present over here, and these negative charges, they are separated with respect to each other. Correct. So will they form a capacitance over here or not? It is just looking something like this. The parallel plate capacitor, the diagram that I shown you in the first slide. Correct. The positive, positive, negative, negative. Correct. It formed a capacitor. It formed a capacitor, right? In a similar manner, if you look over here, even that forms a capacitance. And what determines that capacitance actually? So that capacitance is determined by the width of the depletion region. The width of the depletion region. The more the W depth, right? The more is the W depth, correct? So then the farther, then the, what you can say, this W depth is more, then these charges, see, this capacitance is not a actual capacitance. Actual capacitance means this is a hardcore capacitance. This is a hardcore capacitance. This capacitance that you are seeing over here, this is a small signal capacitor actually. This is a small signal capacitance. Small signal capacitance means you have to apply some kind of AC transient signal having some kind of frequency across this PN junction to observe it. So when you apply some kind of AC signal, what actually happens? Let me just show you. This signal, let's say this signal is some kind of sinusoid signal and all, correct? So if this voltage becomes positive during this particular cycle, right? So let's say during this particular part, this voltage will become positive, correct? So because of that, whatever extra whatever extra depletion region that will form over here and over here, correct? Whatever extra depletion region that will form because of this applied signal over here, that constitutes the capacitance now. So now this capacitance, the plate corresponding to one plate of the capacitor is present over here, and the other plate is actually present over here, and their separation that you are seeing, it is nothing but denoted by W depletion. Now if I have these two plates, let's say these two plates are in first case very near to each other, and in second case these two plates are very far apart. So now can anyone please tell me in which case the capacitance will be more and in which case the capacitance will be lesser? Extreme, very good, very good. C is what? Epsilon A by D, correct? So now, very good. So now W dep is small. W dep is small. That means the capacitance is large over here. If W dep is large over here, that means capacitance is small. What happened? See, this was for the PN junction. For the PIN junction, what is actually happening? If I take the same width, correct? This was the intrinsic region that I had. So whatever extra signal that I am applying, whatever depletion region changes because of that, it will be actually at the edge over here, correct? At the edge over here. So the W depth in the PIN junction is very high compared to the W depth in the PN junction. Now if W depth in the PIN is very large compared to the W depth in the PN junction, then the capacitance, the small signal capacitance of this PIN junction will be smaller than this capacitance of the PN junction, correct? Now because these capacitances are very small in the PIN junction, this PIN junction can react extremely fast compared to this PN junction. See, what do I mean by that? Why did I say that? Because the capacitance is small, the response time increased. I will just give you an example. Just consider this R and C over here. Correct? So if this C, if the value of C is actually reduced to a very small value, right, then this voltage over here, it will rise very, very fast. If I put a very big capacitor, 1 farad of capacitor, then this voltage will take forever to charge to its state, to reach its steady state value. But if I put this capacitance very small, it can react very quickly, right? Instantaneously it can charge, instantaneously it can reach to its value whatever I want. This is what I means by the response time. So if the capacitance of this PIN is smaller, it can react very quickly to the changes that I am applying. And this capacitance actually makes the PIN junction very suitable for high frequency application. To high frequency application. I hope this is very much clear to you, because see that where does the frequency came in picture over here. These bits that you are seeing over here, 101010, the if I try to draw it with respect to time, this is how the waveform will look like, right? If I can shrink the width of this rectangle, then it will look something like this. Correct? That means in the same amount of time I can transmit more number of bits. That means if I reduce the width of this, that means my bit rate, my bit rate is nothing but the number of bits that I am able to transmit. It will actually increase, and in the same amount of time I will be able to send more amount of data. Correct? So now if the PIN diode, if this PIN junction is capable of handling high frequencies also, that means it is telling me, hey, you can do one thing. Instead of having the width of the rectangle, that is the bits, to be this much high, you can actually shrink the bits to something like this, and my PIN junction I can still respond very fastly to whatever changes in the intensity that you are actually making on the transmitter side. So this information that you are seeing over here, this can be any video information, any image. Let's say one of the person from here is trying to send a WhatsApp image from transmitter to, maybe the other colleague is actually residing in UK and you are residing in India. Correct? Let's say you want to transmit one video via WhatsApp from India to UK. You want it to get transmitted as quickly as possible, right? So and also one thing, you don't want the quality of the video to degrade. So I want to transmit this video extremely fast. What will I do? I will try to reduce the width of this rectangle to such a low value over here that I can carry out the whatever video I wanted to transmit. Let's say it got converted into 1 lakh bits, 101010. Correct? So if it got converted into 1 lakh bits, I want to transmit this 1 lakh bits in as small time as possible. If I want to transmit these bits in as small time as possible, that means the width of this rectangle has to reduce. But to reduce the width of the rectangle, I have to first check whether my photo detector device can handle such a high frequency or not. And in your Fourier transform and Fourier series, you must have seen that if I have a rectangular width like this, and in another case if I have a rectangular width like this, then the frequency spectrum of this small rectangle, it contains a lot of frequencies compared to this rectangle. This is where your mathematics come into the picture, right? This is why studying Fourier transform is so much important. Correct? If I reduce the width of the rectangle, that means the frequency contents of my signal are increasing, and I have to make sure that the device present in the receiver is capable of handling such a high frequency content. Correct? And who will tell me that? This PIN junction will tell me how much high frequency it can handle without distorting any data. The PN junction cannot handle such a high frequencies which PIN junction can handle, and this is why it is so much important to study this PIN junction. I hope it is very much clear to you that why we are going behind this PIN junction, and why sir has taught this PIN junction for maybe at least 15 or 20 minutes, and we will revisit this when sir will teach you about the photo detectors. I hope you at least got an overview of why we are studying the PIN junction, and at least you will not tell your friends that the sir is teaching a lot of different concepts and I am not even able to understand what are their different applications. Correct? Whatever we are studying, each of them has a particular application behind it. It is just that you are not being exposed to the field right now. As you go in your third or fourth year, everything will become clear to you. Correct? And this was the question that I had asked, like why PIN is faster than the PN junction. I hope the answer to you is very much clear to now, that the width of the depletion region is higher, the capacitance of this PIN junction is very smaller, so it can react extremely fast to the incoming signals. Correct. So I hope the all the concepts are very much clear to you guys. If you guys have any doubts, then poke me right now. I will stop here for 1 minute. Any doubts? Was it clear why we are at least studying the PIN junction? Why PIN is so much important compared to the PN junction when we consider the case of the optical fiber and all? Okay, very good. So now what we will do, we will just take one or two very easy problems. I don't want to take a lot of time because we just have 10 minutes left. So other two TAs will cover a lot of problems. If you see their sessions, they are covering some very interesting problems. So I request you guys to please attend those sessions, and they will cover a lot of problems from Donald Niemann's as well as from the previous year's exercise problems as well. So now we will just solve maybe two or three questions, that too maybe MCQ type, right? So now the first question that we have is, what is the physical meaning of area under the curve E of x versus x? Correct. So what do we mean by that? So let's say I have some function. This is my f of x and this is x. Can anyone please tell me, by using your class 11th and 12th mathematics, how to find the area under this curve? What should I do? Integrate. Yep, very good. So f of x dx is, this will be nothing but area. Correct. Now what they are asking is, what is the physical meaning of area under the curve E of x versus x? So now what they are asking me is to do E of x dx. What is this quantity? What is this quantity? Exactly, very good. So v is nothing but your minus into integration of E of x dx. So this physical significance of this area under the curve E of x is nothing but the built-in potential of the junction. Very good. So now the next question is, in one-sided PN junction, the width of the depletion region varies with. So first of all, I have to look at the formula for the width of the depletion region, because there are some terms like built-in potential and some concentrations of the p type or n type. So they are asking me the on which of the parameters, if I just have a junction, let's say p plus n junction, then you know that the most of the width will actually exist on the n region, and there will be a very small width that will actually exist over here. So this is xp and this is xl. Correct. So now if I just have a formula for width of the depletion region, you must have seen this in the lecture materials as well. So now for one-sided junction, that means nd is much greater than na. So now if nd is much greater than na, can you tell me the relation for 1 upon nd and 1 upon na? Which will be greater? Which will be greater? nd is much greater than na. Out of 1 upon na and 1 upon nd, which will be higher? Okay, I will do one thing. If I have number 100 and I have a number 10, correct? If I do 1 upon 100, what is this value? 0.01. If I do 1 upon 10, what is this? 0.1. So 100 was greater than 10, but if you look, which is greater, 0.1 or 0.01? 0.1, right? So if nd is much greater than na, then 1 upon na is much greater than 1 upon nd. Correct? So if I'm having the addition of 1 upon na plus 1 upon nd over here, I can easily ignore the term 1 upon nd because it is very small. So if I ignore the term 1 upon nd, then w will become what? Root of 2 epsilon by q, correct? 1 upon na times vbi. Now w is proportional to vbi and w is proportional to 1 upon root of 1 upon na as well. So now I have to look for this. Correct? So the width of the depletion region is proportional to the root of VBI. So first of all, this answer is not correct. In this answer also, I have to look where is 1 upon root NA. Here I have 1 upon root NA and root VBI. So this second answer is correct over here. Correct? So now, guys, we will stop over here because we just have 4 minutes left. So really sorry for not able to cover a lot of problems because I had to make sure that there is enough motivation to go ahead in the course, and all the concepts that you have studied till now, especially for the PN junctions, they are very much clear to you. The problems will be solved by the other two TS. So I kindly request you to please join the sessions. In the next week's problem solving session, I will try to cover a lot of problems in that session. So any doubts till now? Anything that you didn't understand in the today's PPT, because today's PPT was entirely conceptual. We had a lot of interaction and we looked at very interesting conceptual problems, right? Anything that you didn't get from today's lecture? Any doubts? Was everything clear to you? Okay, very good. Thanks a lot for a good feedback. Just a last call for the doubt for today's session, or else we will close the session in 1 minute. Last call for doubts. Okay, guys, thanks a lot for staying here for 2 hours. Sorry for ruining your evening. Please enjoy rest of your evening and have a great weekend ahead. Thanks a lot, guys. See you in the next session. Thank you.